Have you ever felt like you're not good enough? Have you struggled with low self-worth? Or even worse, has somebody in your life told you that you're not good enough? Well, stick around because this week's episode, we're going to be talking all about how childhood trauma and abuse and the impact of narcissistic parents can really mess you up in future and stop you being the most badass version of yourself. My name is Selena Waterman-Smith. I'm the host of the podcast Say It Louder, where we speak things that are unspeakable. And if you stay till the end, I'm going to share with you the most essential mindset hacks and how I recovered from all of my trauma and became this version of myself after doing years of self-development work. First of all, I'm going to share a few things with you about my own story and about the healing work that I did to recover from it. So I am a survivor of childhood abuse and childhood trauma. My mother unfortunately passed away when I was 3, and we had a narcissistic stepmother enter our lives. If this resonates with you already, I know that narcissistic mothers are so common. Just drop a comment below and I will be reading all of your comments, but join the community, drop a comment and let us know that you have also experienced this. Narcissistic mothers are more common than narcissistic fathers, although they exist. And certainly in my case, there was all the classic signs of emotional abuse. So withholding love, manipulation, conditioning, control. There was a power dynamic in the family. And this went on from ages about 7 till 11. She was also quite a violent person, but for me personally, the violence was not the worst part of my childhood. I think that sometimes power dynamics can be more emotionally damaging than physical violence. And this really played out with the rest of the family. So she had kids of her own and I had elder siblings. And what she created was a hierarchy whereby I became the black sheep. And if you're also the black sheep of your family, welcome, we can start a black sheep club. You may also recognize some other roles. If you had siblings and you were growing up in a narcissistic household, you may recognize the invisible child and the golden child. The golden child is the one that the narcissistic parent lavishes all of their attention on. The invisible child tends to stay out of the drama because they found safety in avoiding the conflict. And the black sheep of the family, or the scapegoat, is often the one that gets all of the punishment, and it's directed at them from the narcissistic parent. It certainly was in my case, but then unfortunately that conditioning is picked up by everyone else in the family. So what then happens is you have a ripple effect that will carry on throughout the rest of your life, and unconsciously your other family members may replicate that dynamic that was forged from childhood from the narcissistic parent. Even if that parent isn't in your life anymore, it may continue into adulthood. And this is why so many of us end up having to go no contact with other family members, because that conditioning that happened in your formative years is so important and it's so profound. So the impact that it had on me was pretty catastrophic. So this step parent used to do academic coaching with me, or what she said was academic coaching, but actually she would use this one-to-one access to me to sit and tell me repeatedly how I was worthless, I wasn't good enough, I shouldn't try at school because all I would do is embarrass the family. She would tell me that my dad didn't love me, that no one would ever love me. And of course, when you're young, when you're even under age 10, you absorb everything that your parents tell you, because your parents are your blueprint for relationships. They're your blueprint for everything that you know about the world around you. So I would believe her, and then naturally I became quite dysfunctional at school. I don't understand the psychology behind narcissism or why narcissists want to destroy people. They just do. They're very dangerous people and they're walking among us. Why she decided to put her energy into destroying a child's life, I will never know. But she did completely convince me that I was worthless and unlovable. So again, being taught these things in my formative years, this really set me up for several decades of misery, because this impacted not only my academic achievements, but it impacted how I showed up in relationships, the type of relationships that I tolerated, the type of romantic relationships I tolerated, because I genuinely thought that I was worthless. And the tragic thing is that no one corrected her. So my dad point blank refused to hear about the abuse. We never discussed it. It was almost like it was a shameful secret. And my siblings as a diluted version of her, really encouraged me to think that this was my fault and that I was somehow to blame for it. And this is just tragic that any child would grow up thinking that they're not worthy, or that there's something wrong with them, or that they don't deserve love and good things. And again, if this is you and this is resonating with you, please comment below, because I will read all of your comments. So growing up, I was an underachiever. I performed really poorly academically, which my dad always used to get really angry at me about. And I grew up thinking that life was really pointless. I had all sorts of mental health issues. And in fact, at one point, the abuse at home got so bad that I actually tried to kill myself at age 11, which, again, nothing was talked about. Nothing was said when I was in hospital. Nobody came and spoke to me. There was no report to social services. It really baffles me that probably back in the early 90s, we treat mental health so differently, especially the mental health of a child, where children have clear mental health issues and nothing is done about it. So I'm really surprised that it got to that point, and nothing was done. And I then had a pattern of getting into other relationships that were borderline abusive, because this became my norm. And this is the crucial thing. Red flags don't feel like red flags when they feel like home. If something is familiar to you, the brain likes familiar, a familiar pattern, a familiar environment. If your nervous system has only ever been exposed to environments that are unsafe, you will think that unsafety is the norm, and that's what you'll crave. And unconsciously, you'll be drawn to social environments and relationships that replicate those that you've had growing up. And this is why it's so hard to be a cycle breaker and to break away from all of that. So after I tried to unalive myself, I then ended up being groomed by somebody, because as a vulnerable child with low self-worth, I was probably the perfect prey for more predators. And the predators didn't stop there. Throughout my life, I have had a history of romantic relationships that were quite predatory. My first ever boyfriend was also domestically violent and stalked me for several years and was arrested 25 times, but never charged for stalking me. Again, the way that women's safety is dealt with around domestic violence and stalking is completely different. So as you can imagine, I have been through some pretty terrible things. I've had my mother die. I was abused by my stepmother. My family didn't really offer me any sort of support. And then I was just thrust out into the world. But somehow I have broken all of those cycles and done significant work on myself, which I'm going to talk to you about exactly what I did at the end of this podcast. And I have managed to overcome all of that. So if you're feeling hopeless and directionless, I want to assure you that you can too. There is hope for you. The way that you feel now is not how you're going to feel forever. However you feel now is temporary. And here's the crucial thing. Most people accept their lives. They don't lead their lives. But this is an opportunity for you to actually lead your life, to challenge the conditioning that's been foisted on you. Even if you weren't a victim of childhood abuse or trauma, somebody may have made you feel at some point in your life that you aren't good enough. And there's a way to fix that. And I'm really glad that you're here with me and that we're going to be discussing it. So the first step towards fixing anything inside you that you feel is broken because of conditioning that has been projected onto you, because of things that people may have told you about yourself or things that people may have said. The first step is being able to recognize what that conditioning says, where it started, and then challenging it. You don't have to believe that the things that other people tell you, even that voice inside your head, that bitch is crazy. That voice is not always right. That's your inner stream of consciousness that's just yapping away about everything it sees around you. All of the data that we receive from our five senses is just being processed in our mind, and we have this stream of consciousness in this running tap that is constantly saying things to you. So ask yourself, how often is that voice saying nice things to you? How often is it telling you horrible things? I bet a lot of the time it's really critical. So learning to control that voice and learning to recognize that you are not your emotions, you are not your thoughts, and you also get to control your thoughts. And this becomes much easier when you learn how to do it internally. It also gives you a filter to process external thoughts, things that people project on you. Because one thing I know is that damaged people, narcissistic people, love to project their messed up thoughts onto you. So talking back about how parents are the blueprint for everything you know about your life, your family dynamic quite often we talk about the cycle of abuse, because if you've come from an environment where you've seen your dad hit your mum, you may unconsciously go into relationships where you were a victim of domestic abuse, because that becomes your norm. And it even goes deeper than that. When you think about your morals, your values, your beliefs, your dynamic between people, even religion, it's very often passed on from families. So what are the things that your family and your upbringing have told you about yourself? What do you believe about money, about relationships, about how people should treat one another, about your goals in the world? Are you allowed to dream? Have you been encouraged to dream? Have you been encouraged to think that you're excellent? And if you haven't had a good upbringing, you haven't been told that you're worthy and lovable and you deserve all the good things that you want, I'm sorry, because that's just criminal. Everybody on this planet has a right to feel good about themselves and has a right to feel loved. I personally know exactly how it feels to feel like you're not good enough and to feel like you're unworthy and you're unlovable and to lack self-belief, which people that know me now as an adult are probably surprised by, because I was on The Apprentice and I've been running businesses for 20 years. But trust me, those things didn't happen overnight. And they happened in spite of my upbringing. But it did take me several years of self-development work to go back into my childhood and to unpack all of that conditioning and recognize that I was living my life by other people's beliefs, by beliefs that were projected on me. And although I had negative times in Dubai, moving to Dubai was the first time in my life that I felt free and unshackled from other people's beliefs, because I was away from that dysfunctional family dynamic. So it really gave me an opportunity to step into my power and become who I was meant to be, which was so refreshing to get away from that. And perhaps you don't know necessarily if you have low self-worth or if you have issues with this. As I said, there's plenty of people that haven't had childhood trauma that still struggle with this. So I'll just ask you, when you look around your life today, do you have everything that you want? Are your relationships in harmony? Do you have as much money as you want? Do you have everything that you want in your career, your physical appearance? Because if you're not getting those results, if there's something in your life that's out of sync with what you desire, I guarantee it probably can be traced back to childhood trauma. Or at the very least, somebody telling you that you're not good enough and you're unworthy. And I really want everybody to have great self-worth and great self-esteem, because I lived so much of my life in the shadow. And as I said, now that I've stepped out of that, I feel really happy. Although I did do a lot of work, but I still attracted or maybe even created some dysfunctional dynamics in my work relationships, which you'll hear about in the last 2 episodes of my podcast. That's unfortunately the reasons why I left Dubai, is because I came across another very damaging character in my work life that really was a physical representation of my stepmother. So I hadn't quite healed all of the trauma, but healing from trauma is not linear, as they say. This is completely true. Sometimes you take steps forward and you think that you've fixed everything, and then you take a couple of steps backwards and you realize that actually there's more to unpack. So it is quite a messy process. And if you're doing self-development work yourself, give yourself a pat on the back, because you're actually very brave to do all of this. Most people don't want to do this. They don't want to look at themselves and sit with their uncomfortable self, but I promise you that is the key to healing. So my black sheeps, we've talked about challenging your conditioning and how to break free of those family dynamics, and where it may sometimes just be sensible to go no contact with your family. And this is all called consciousness awareness. And the final thing that I want to tell you, the thing that really helped me through all of the difficult experiences that I've been through in my life, is to tell you that you are not your trauma. You are not your trauma. You are not your thoughts. You are not your feelings. You are not your emotions. And emotions are just curious little creatures that come and go. So how you feel now, it's not a life sentence. And you may have been given a script for how to live your life, but you hold the pen. You now have the pen in your hand and you get to write whatever you want. So you can put down whatever it is that somebody has told you about yourself the moment you recognize it. You recognize what they've told you is wrong, you acknowledge that you don't want it in your life, and you can set it down. And on top of that, I'm going to give you a journaling exercise because everybody loves journaling. I'll repeat this as well in the comments below, just in case I've said it too quickly, because I do have a habit of talking super fast. And if I'm talking too fast to you, again, please comment below and let me know, and I will try to slow it down. So your journaling exercise, I want you to write down 5 beliefs that you formed from your formative years with your family, or maybe even in a relationship that was really dysfunctional and traumatic for you, maybe a codependent or a toxic romantic relationship that's been troubling you. So write down 5 beliefs about money. And this can be something like, money doesn't grow on trees. We've all heard that, right? This is very common of our parents' generation. My dad told me this, you have to work hard for money. Well, let's just look at that belief by itself, because if you're telling people that you have to work hard for money, what you're doing is blocking any opportunity where money might come to you naturally. You don't always have to work hard for money. You can win money. You can be gifted money. This is just one way that we use consciousness awareness to challenge beliefs. So let's do 5 beliefs about money. Whatever you've heard, if your parents were in debt, if you grew up with a scarcity mindset, then there'll be a lot there to unpack for you. And this will be very enlightening because it will show you maybe how those patterns play out in your adult life. 5 beliefs about money, 5 beliefs about love, so about relationship dynamics, romantic love, familial love, 5 beliefs about your relationships, 5 about goals, and 5 about values. And really sit with yourself when you do this, and it will probably trigger memories from your childhood and maybe even unpack some trauma. And if you look at those beliefs, then challenge how many of those you actually unconsciously adopt in your adult life. And then look at how you can reframe them. How can you change those beliefs to get better results in your life? And I really hope this is groundbreaking for you, because it's a really simple exercise, but we're looking to get into the unconscious mind. That's where all the juice is. That's where all the good stuff is. Nothing good comes from external validation or from sources outside of you. Everything you want is within. So on that note, I really hope that this episode was useful to you. These episodes are now moving more into talking about healing and practical resources to overcome traumatic things, as well as me sharing stories about my own trauma. Episode 6, we're going to be talking about The Apprentice, which is where most of you know me from. Yes, I will be sharing some piping hot tea from the episodes that I was on, which is nearly 10 years ago, so it's a really good time for me to be talking about it. And I hope that you tune in next week. This is the Say It Louder podcast, because remember, nothing good happens when we stay silent. What we have to do is say it louder.